Welcome, everybody, to another great episode of the Alford Sports Talk Show. I'm Alan, and today we have a fantastic guest for you. Do you have any desire of being drafted or recruited? Well, you're in for a real treat. Jeff is the person who's going to give you some great insight on how to get recruited and how to get drafted. So we're going to bring Jeff Howell on in just a moment. But first, we're going to thank our wonderful sponsor, Chef G's Florida Barbecue Sauce. So delicious and addicting, you may need a support group. Please feel free to visit Chef G's at 301 South 22nd Street, right here in Tampa, Florida. And if you can't visit them there, check out any one of the 4 great flavors at flbbqsauce.com, flbbqsauce.com. Don't forget that sauce. Let's bring on our great guest, Jeff, and thank you again for joining us on the Alford Sports Talk Show. Welcome, everybody, to another great episode of the Alford Sports Talk Show. We have a great treat for you. We have Jeff Howell. He's a recruiter, and he's going to help you get into that college that you're thinking about getting into. So we'll start right there, Jeff. Pleasure to meet you. How you doing?
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Same here. And yeah, so that's the thing that people want to know is if you're somebody who's an athlete and you want to get into that university or that college, how do you make that happen?
Sure. I think with the advent of social, 10, 15 years ago, I think that changed the game and made it a lot easier for athletes to share their information and to get the attention of the people that they want to. Back in the day, you used to have these recruiters that would go to games and they would have these lists on these magazines and these mimeographed sheets that would be handed out everywhere. And, obviously that was archaic, but that just is how it was done. Now it is so easy to put together a highlight reel. You can do it on your phone with iMovie. You can do it by using Huddle and all of the playlists that your coaches will put together of all the games that you have. So I think the first step that you've got to do above all else is to ask yourself that question. Be honest with yourself. Am I ready and capable of playing at the next level? That's kind of the first thing. If you say, yeah, absolutely, I want to explore that option, then you've got to jump on social media. You've got to get an X account if you don't already have one. If you have one, make sure it's kind of scrubbed to not show anything you don't want anybody to see. So if you want to have 2 accounts, have at it. Have one for recruiting and have one just for your friends. Make sure it's a nice fully completed social profile. I've got a blog post about it on my website that explains all that. But have a fully completed X account with a bio that has your year of graduation, your stats, what sports you primarily play, your GPA, your NCAA eligibility number, if that's applicable to you. And, just have that and start just connecting with as many coaches as you possibly can. Not even coaches that you may be interested in their program, but you want to start gaining that traction and just having those connections there. The next thing, obviously, you want to register for the NCAA Eligibility Center. Now, there are 3 different versions here. There's a free version, which is typically for D3 athletes. And then if you're going to play at a D2 or D1 level, you do have to pay for it, but you don't have to do that right away. If you start getting traction and attention by D1 and D2 programs, then that's when you kind of foot that bill and pay that investment. It's like $90, I think, so it isn't a lot, but that's definitely something that you need to do. And then the next thing you're going to need to do is get on NCSA. Now, you don't want to use NCSA necessarily as their service. You don't need to pay for their service because a lot of this stuff you can do on your own. However, many coaches use NCSA to do their research on athletes. And if you have a completed profile there with all of your combine type stats if you play football, any of your camp stats if you play basketball, or any of the other sports that are out there, you have statistics there. You'll have kind of a personal statement. You've got huddle reels and highlight links. You've got all that information. But the beauty of NCSA is their program searching tool, where you can search by NC D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, and of multiple sports. So you can search by state, you can search by major, you can search by division level, and then you can get a list of schools to start researching. So those are the 3 things that you definitely want to start doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, now out of all the social media platforms, I know you mentioned, Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter X.
Right.
Why that particular social media you feel is the best to get recruited?
That's where the coaches are. It makes it very easy to maintain those connections. You've got TikTok and Instagram are also 2 social platforms that are being widely and heavily used and adopted by coaches. But X is primarily where the main recruiting coaches for those football and basketball and sports programs are. And they make it very easy to connect with you. Obviously, if you connect with them and they have their DMs open, then they're going to want to hear from you, right? There's a reason why they've left their DMs unopened, because they want to get those highlight reels. They want to get those connections from those prospective athletes. And so X definitely is the primary place, but then you also want to have a good placement on Instagram and TikTok to a lesser extent, but definitely a place that you need to kind of hang out and see if there's some coaches there that you need to connect with.
And you did mention, Jeff, to follow as many coaches, even if you're not interested in a program. What
Right.
advantage do you have doing it that way?
So the reason why you want to do that is primarily to trick the algorithm of X to make your account show up in the recommended accounts for recruiters to follow. So the more coaches that you're connected with, the more active you are on X, the more likely your account might show up in one of those recommended accounts. And if you've got a completed bio with a link to your main huddle highlight, the chances are coach is actually connecting with you first before you connect with them.
Oh, that's interesting. And you mentioned huddle a few times. Is huddle you would say number one as far as highlight reel?
I believe so, yeah. And huddle makes it really easy, especially if you play one of the big three sports, football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer to a lesser extent. But huddle makes it real easy for coaches to set up the cameras and to record the contests of that particular in one large video. They use it for film and tape. So, whenever you get together as an athlete group to review tape of the previous game, huddle is typically where that is. But the beauty of huddle is that the coaches can break the game down into different highlights. So you can highlight yourself using huddles like a video editor, and then you can put together a highlight reel. And you want to do that as often as you can. Usually you might want to have a handful, 5 or 6 different highlight reels that you can put together, starting as early as you can. Freshman, great. Sophomore, typically, yes. Junior and senior, absolutely. And you find your different highlights that you want for those particular contests. You do a handful of games and put together something cool, usually 3 to 5 minutes, anything more than that. And then one thing I think a lot of athletes do incorrectly is they embellish the video. They add a bunch of extra stuff, a lot of extra graphics. They add music to it. That isn't necessary. Coaches don't care about that. What they want is the player to be highlighted before the play, let the play run, and then go to the next one. And highlight the player, let the play run, and go to the next one. They care more about your skill set and how you produce in a live game situation than they do about extra graphics and music.
And that's something that a lot of athletes do. They jazz up the video too much in that regard.
They have a tendency, and I haven't seen it so much more recently in the last few months, but having a highly well-produced video, there's nothing wrong with that. Have one produced, put one together, make it like a really cool highlight reel, share it on your different social media accounts. But for the one that you primarily send out to recruiters and the one that you put in the section of the recruiting questionnaire for your highlight reel, make sure you use one that isn't very embellished.
Okay, that's definitely great advice, because I know people go a little crazy with the editing.
They can, yeah.
And as far as sending it out, let's say you have a highlight reel, you have a very good social media platform, but you're not getting the attraction. How do you send it out to places or coaches?
Sure. A couple things you can do. This is where the NCSA account, the program search function is really helpful. So you can search for different areas, different states, and different programs that you're looking for. So what you'll do is you'll say you want to look for colleges in Iowa, look for D2 programs in Iowa or NAIA programs in Iowa, and it'll give you a list of schools that meet that criteria. Then what you'll do is you'll actually go to that individual school's athletic website, okay? And then you'll search for the sport that you want to participate in. And then go down and look for the staff or the coaching staff links, and they'll give you a list of all the coaches that are actively part of that staff. Many times there will be email addresses for those coaches, sometimes not, but at the very least they'll have a Twitter handle, a phone number, and an email address. Larger programs won't have that. So D1, part of the big Power 5 conferences, the coaches' emails typically aren't there. But what you will find is a recruiter or a director of recruiting for that program that you can contact. So once you kind of made that list of coaches that you want to send an email to, go ahead and put together an email. I've actually got a template on my website that you can go grab, edit it for your personalize it for your uses, and then email it out. Then the cool thing about that email is you can also use it as a direct message because there's no character limit on a DM. So take that same text, and if you don't have an email address to a coach, but you do have their X handle, then just send that email through a DM. So that's another way that you can make those connections. You'll find that actually a lot of coaches do still use email. One of the main reasons they do that is because the recruitment questionnaires that you have to fill out before you do anything else. This is one of the things I forgot at the very top of the interview. Go fill out those recruitment questionnaires for any of those colleges that you're interested in. That'll put you on their radar. But those recruitment questionnaires get sent to those coaches' email addresses. And if you follow up with a DM or an email, they'll be able to make that connection between the email that you sent and the stats from the recruiting questionnaire.
Yeah, and a lot of people underestimate the power of networking because there are players that do get noticed by sending their information out, like you mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important.
Yeah, and you find that, and your son, he was able to go ahead and persevere and make it. Tell a little bit about his story.
Sure. So we were at a small rural school in Breckenridge, Michigan. Didn't have a whole ton of looks because the program that he was a part of really wasn't helping him out. So we moved to a local city about half an hour away, and his junior year is sort of his breakout season. He was a starter. He spent a lot of time, a lot of hard work, training his body and learning his craft. And the summer between his sophomore year and junior year, we went to a few camps, got his butt kicked. But it was a really good experience for him because, yes, he realized that he had a long way to go, but he utilized that as a learning process to know what he needed to work on. So all through his junior year, we got a lot of really good film. And I helped him with his X account and in sending emails out to everybody. I mean, we sent emails and connections out to schools all over the Midwest, all over the Southeast and the Northeast, just to get some interaction and get some traction and kind of learn this process and try and find, a lot of trial and error at that point. He got some looks from a couple of D1 programs and he got some looks from a couple of D2 programs. Most of the interaction that he really got was from some D3 and a couple NAIA programs. And don't sleep on NAIA. They have good scholarship money and they have good competition. So NAIA is always is a good outlet for programs as well. And so he was getting a lot of really good interaction with coaches. And we were on a visit, or we're taking a visit to a couple of schools in Minnesota. And one of the recruiting coaches for Lake Forest, a D3 program near Chicago, just reached out to him about a month before our trip was scheduled and said, hey, have you found a place yet? Would you be interested in stopping by? And so we added Lake Forest to our trip because it was on the way. And, we did the official tour. Typically those things last 2 hours, right? We were there for 6. And it just felt like it was the right place for Joe to be. And so now he started his freshman year. He's played a little bit, not a ton, but he's a freshman, right? So he's still learning the program. He's getting his body into shape, and he's had a couple of little nagging injuries here and there. But again, he's a freshman. He's not expected to have a massive contribution just yet. And he's just kind of learning the playbook, learning the process, and really just kind of getting into the whole experience. He's only been there 2 months, right? So he's got to give it time. But, to really made Joe feel really good that he was getting all of this attention. And he was like, he asked us one night, he's like, is this normal? And we're like, no, this isn't normal. All the attention, all the emails, all the connections, it isn't normal because he put in the work, he put in the hard work. And that's like the main thing is like, yeah, you can do all of this activity to connect with coaches, but if you're not doing the hard work and having a good highlight reel together, and if you're not putting in the work to better yourself and going to these camps and learning what you need to do to make yourself better, then you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, and then definitely that's a great story. And speaking of camps, is there any particular camps that you would recommend to anyone to go to?
Yeah, any camps that have the maximum amount of colleges participating: basketball, football, baseball, softball, soccer. So look for ones that have, maybe they're being hosted by a larger university, right? But they have a handful, half a dozen, 7 or 8 other schools that are either participating or just they're observing. So you want to go to those, and also go to a few that are close by. If you have it in your time and in your budget, just go to a couple local ones, because that'll kind of keep your skills going. It'll give you some things to work on. And then when you go to the bigger ones, you'll be able to showcase your skills and practice the new skills that you've acquired over time and really stand out.
Yeah, that's definitely great. And I know that I meet a variance amount of athletes. And is there any particular university you would recommend or they should look at, let's say if they are an elite athlete and they want to make that next step to the NFL, they're thinking that far in advance. Is there any schools you would suggest or recommend?
Well, I mean, obviously you've got the major names, the Alabamas and the Oregons and the Texas A&Ms and Michigan and Ohio State and those. But you'd be surprised that maybe some of the Penn States or a lot of Big Ten schools produce a lot of really great athletes, especially the ones that don't get a lot of play. So your offensive line, your defensive line, your special teams guys, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota. But then obviously you got USC and don't sleep on Colorado. Like, I know Colorado's getting a lot of clicks now just because of Coach Prime, but I'm interested in seeing what he's got to put together in a couple of years. I think you give him 3 or 4 more years, and he's going to start producing some pretty great NFL athletes too. And if you go there now, you can kind of be in the ground floor of a program that I think if he sticks with it and doesn't go anywhere, that could be a perennial powerhouse down the road. But your typical blue chip schools that you normally get NFL players out of, that's where you're going to want to head to. But again, don't sleep on D3 programs too. Grand Valley State University in Michigan, Ferris State, SVSU. You don't sleep on some of those programs because they do produce, NFL elite talent here and there. Adam Thielen came from Mankato State, D2 school in south of the Twin Cities. So, you can kind of make it anywhere. What it really comes down to is having some luck and just getting in front of the right program. That's
right. I mean, you said it great about Coach Prime. And if you go to that school, you're already doing great because you're going to get media attention. People watching the game.
That's 100% true. Good or bad.
Yeah. So you're going to get attention. And to your point, Tyreek Hill, he superstar in the NFL, didn't go to one of the bigger conferences. So it can happen. It
absolutely can. It depends on how hard you're going to work for it, and how to get your attention. And there's nothing like a great social media platform and a great social media presence to help give you that exposure.
Exactly. And then speaking of that, and where can people find you to enlist into getting more help through your website?
Well, thank you for asking. So my website is jeffhowell.me. JEFFHOWELL.me. My social media links are in the top menu, so my Twitter and Instagram. I have a page on my site. It's called How We Empower. It's in the menu at the top. I've got 3 different ways that I can help student athletes and their parents get an edge in the recruiting process. One is a self-paced course that I've developed. It's not very expensive. You can go get that, and then you can sign up for it. And then the beauty of it is that you can access it at any time and take it at your own pace. You can pause it, do a few things, come back to it. You have it for forever. And then I work with local high schools or not local. I can go anywhere I want to, or do video chats. But I can work with high school athletic directors and do a seminar for parents and the student athletes. So I can come and do that for them. I also have that option. And then I have more of a partner program where it's very similar to the self-paced course, but I'm more involved in the process, and they kind of have a plan of action that I talk with them every couple of weeks, check in, give them some training, and kind of just catch up and see how they're doing. So I got 3 different options I can help parents and their athletes out.
That's awesome, Jeff. And definitely it's a proven model that works. We appreciate you joining us on the Allen Alford Sports Talk Show. We're going to make sure we follow you on all social media platforms.
Great.
And make sure we spread the word to go ahead and check you out, because you're going to be the person that people are going to rely on to go ahead and get to that next level.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.